communication. So I have a story around this. My last house, I had a home inspector who every time I asked him, he pointed something out, pointed out furnace. And I said, okay, like what would you recommend? Like, what are we looking at here? And he just stubbornly repeated the same party line. He sounded like a politician when he was just like, I recommend you contact a qualified furnace contractor and get an estimate. And he like almost mocked me because he like would say that 3, 4, 5 times per section of the house. And I started getting pissed off. So I ended up being like, that was the worst inspection I've ever seen or heard of because he just parroted and repeated the same party line and it just annoyed me. And like that just goes to show like the rest of the report could have been great. Everything else could have been amazing, but his communication skills were so robotic that I was like, why am I paying you again? Um, so again, he may have been a great technical inspector, but the soft skills of even noticing that I was getting frustrated, even he didn't even catch on to that and explain maybe even why he just has to be that way. So you guys are both amazing communicators. Chance, you mentioned your inspector was pretty empathetic, right? It was pretty aware. Like, what was some of that communication like?
He could see when, he would point something out and on his report, he had circled it as a defect and he could see us talking like, oh no, do we need to fix this? And he'd be like, hey, listen, contractor recommended, professional, blah, blah, but it's $30 at Home Depot.
Uh, yeah.
I'll shoot you a YouTube on how to do it yourself. So it's like, he puts things into perspective and context. So it's like, we didn't freak out, although he did need to do his job and make us aware of the issue. He put it into a context that we could understand and say, hey, it's not the end of the world.
Agents love that too. Like
Yeah.
that, we coach inspectors all the time. Like lead with that sometimes to say, hey, I'm not an alarmist. I'm not gonna a hairline crack on the foundation does not mean the home's gonna fall through the ground. Like those happen. Like those are acceptable.
I love what Chance said earlier too on that is you're probably as a home inspector, hopefully the least scared person walking into this situation.
That's true.
You're the one with maybe the least skin in the game there's so
True.
much if you've bought a home, there's so much emotion that goes with that and the nerves and hoping nothing goes wrong with the inspection and hoping that the bank is lined up right and all. There's so much to it. So remember that you're going into a place where the agent's not going to show up, but they're worried because they want their commission, and the homeowner is probably internally freaking out already. So anything you can do, your soft skills to make people feel better in that moment, they're really going to appreciate that.
That's such a good point. I've never heard it phrased that way before of like, you're the least worried because you've seen this story before and you know a home and you're not invested in it, which requires more empathy. So I love that a lot. I think even experienced inspectors probably have the most trouble with this. If you've seen 100 homes, you're like, oh, another job, another day. But to that person, that's their 400K they're taking out a loan for, So I like just thinking of these considerations. You can even tell agents if you're an inspector that you do consider these things. You notice if it's a millennial or a fifth time home buyer that's just buying it as an investment property, they're going to be in different emotional states, right? James, you mentioned addressing the agent. I think a lot of inspectors really mind the client on site. That's like obvious, right? But like I tell a lot of inspectors, like you got to pay attention to the agent too if they're there walking around with you, of kind of like addressing their fears and checking in with them, because that's your source of business too.
Yeah.
Empathy. We're big on it here at Spectora, but George Scott, this episode, I mean, he's one of the OGs, he's one of the dons in the industry of kind of like client care and communication. And like, if you don't feel that, I think you have to somehow, like, James, what would you recommend if you don't have a deep-seated need to take care of people? What do you do?
There's a lot of great industries out there for you, I'm sure.
You got to care some, right? You got to care a little.
Yeah. No, I think you have to find ways to relate to people, to get to know people, and just we as human beings, we are storytelling animals and machines, right? Everything we do is telling a story to ourselves or telling stories to other people. So learn people's stories. I mean, get a little bit of background on them. It'll help you care. Honestly, if you understand where somebody's coming from, if you understand, hey, this is the fifth house these people have, they put offers on 4 houses and it's fallen through. Like, if you know that story, it's going to help you care about doing a really good job for them, because they're going through a lot. So get to know people, hear the story, let them know your story. It'll go a long way for connection.
I love that. I think, like, to me, curiosity leads to caring. Kind of like, I mean,
Yeah.
as said differently, like if you ask a few questions, like you said, the fifth house, like, oh, what's that been like? What's it been like to be a homeowner? That'll force you to care because they're going to say something and you're going to have to listen, and then some more facts about it, right? So it leads to caring. Chance, you're one of the most likable guys I know. So
Amen to that.
yeah, it's underrated in terms of warmth, humor, trustworthiness, just like being in the moment. I don't know if you can speak to that, of what you would guide inspectors in terms of like not holding back on maybe a joke you were going to tell, or being warm, or even just like putting your hand on someone's shoulder and just saying like, hey, I get it. This is scary.
Yeah.
Can
It's
it be
kind of
coached? Yeah.
yeah.
Can it be coached?
It can be coached, but also, again, be genuine. If you're not warm and you're not funny, then don't force it, because it'll come across weird and people will be like, why is he making that joke? Like it doesn't fit. So be who you are. You are perfect who you are, but add in little pieces of it. If you're not great at humor, then pre-plan a couple of jokes at the beginning or the end and just sprinkle it in. Don't
I
be
like
that
that.
person. So yes, I can't emphasize enough. Be who you are. You are awesome at this. You are going to be awesome at this, but work on some soft skills here and there.
I like that. And maybe acknowledge if you're not warm or not funny. If you're just like, hey, I'm
That
not
can be
going to hear,
good.
I'm not here to tell you jokes.
Yeah.
Make a joke out of the fact that you don't tell jokes.
Yeah.
And I think one on here that's super important, there's a very, very important word on here, and it's trust. I think, business is the process of building trust to make things happen. So, if there's anything on this list, you may not be the warmest person, you may not, be a jokester. Hopefully you're thorough, because that's pretty nice for the job. But trust, if you can find ways to get people to trust you as quickly as possible, that's going to make your life easier. That's going to make them feel at ease. So, make sure that they have an experience that sets you up to be trustworthy. And that's, even simple things like making sure that you're sending reminders and things like that leading up to the actual inspection, so they're not worried that you're going to be a no show, things like that. I mean, just little things can build that trust even before you shake that person's hand for the first time.
That's huge. Yeah. Communication builds trust. Going back to James, what you said on a previous slide of like telling your story, sometimes it's weird, or it's like ironic that sometimes building trust can happen through being vulnerable and telling them something about you. Like if you spilled your coffee on your jeans that morning, like that's authenticity, that's vulnerability, that's saying like, it's been a morning, but I'm focused, I'm here with you now. Like that, little things like that humanize, and that builds trust.
We actually have an inspector that purposely spills coffee on his pants every morning.
Purposeful vulnerability. Yeah, structured vulnerability. We'll brand that. Don't forget to be funny. If you do think you're funny, if you're whatever, this is a good episode to kind of how to inject that in. But again, don't manufacture it to the point to where it's awkward, because then it works against you. Ask your friends what they like about you. I think like that's underrated. Maybe colleagues, friends, other inspectors, anyone in your network, and genuinely ask them and try to get a real answer, because that, if you're not self-aware, you got to find this out. You got to know the answer. James, we talked about driveway speech. It's super important. George Scott gets into it. I think we link to the episode, or we reference the episode in these slides. But what this means is when the client and agent show up, how are you setting the expectations with them in the driveway? How are you making a human connection, reassuring them? Do either of you think every inspector should do this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. I agree.
Honestly, it's all these things are great, but they can also find ways to help you too. This is where you ask for your reviews to grow your business. This is where you can ask for a list of 5 referral people who might need your services coming up soon. So
Ooh. So
again,
that's at the end. Yeah, yeah, exactly. The
this
post
is the
driveway.
mindset shift. This is a home inspecting. Now let's put your business cap on. Think about how you can make this driveway speech work for you now, because you should get some value out of it.
Wow, that bookends it perfectly, right? Because like James, on one hand, it's like tee it up, set your expectations, get the kind of the monkey off your back of like all this tension that's like with the buyer. You set their expectations, then on the end, it's like for both of you. I like that. Cool. Communication, James, active listening, ask questions, anticipate needs. Not a lot to
Yeah,
add there, right? It's like
be a good communicator.
be a good
It's
communicator.
just important. I mean, people the good news is not a lot of times people may not expect that from their home inspector. So it's, you know, if you do go above and beyond on communication, it will be noticed, it will be appreciated.
That's a great call. Like I can't say I would have ever expected an inspector in the driveway to say like, "Hey Kevin, what are you most worried about? Like, what are you looking out for? Like, what do you have any fears around buying this home?" Like, I don't know if I would have known how to answer because I wouldn't have expected that. Um, so I know we're harping on this in terms of communication, but like this episode in particular, he went in depth to talk about like he obsesses over his language and the words he uses to be a clear and concise communicator, and that attention to that, I think, is what's helped him be ultra successful. So, do either of you have any experience with inspectors that you know that do this well, or like anything you want to elaborate on here?
Yeah, I would say, especially if you're coming right out of a school or certification, you guys are wizards. You have all these technical terms. You guys can speak to each other and nerd out. But if you speak to me, I have no idea what you're saying. I'm completely lost. So you do have to realize, like, and you might get caught up. Maybe you're really into home inspecting. Slow down and think, who's your audience, because some people have no idea what you might be saying. Or if this is their 5th, 6th, 7th home, then go ahead, geek out, nerd out, show how amazing and how intellectual you are.
Yeah, I don't know. I still don't know about electrical panels. I don't even know the brands. I don't know anything about them. So if someone tried to even get into it, eyes glaze over right away, right?
I'm lost. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is maybe through training, it either feels more like homes are very complex things, or maybe less as you understand them more. But I'm just thinking, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about, I had did some remodeling in my house, and you know, loved my contractor, talked to him all the time. He was remodeling his basement, and he'd start talking about it, and he'd immediately go into terms I didn't understand. And I just remember many moments of me sitting there for 10 minutes, nodding my head and being like, oh, wow, yeah, oh, okay. And no idea what he was talking about. Most people, you know, we live in houses, we don't understand them. Just remember that.
Yeah. People don't stop you usually because I think about we all want to kind of fit in general. And so we'll just nod and smile and then just be like, yeah, I better Google that
Exactly.
later. Communicate more often. James, you mentioned this twice already. It's like, guys, your confirmation texts and emails in Spectora, make sure they're set up and warm and friendly and written in your tone. Chance, you've probably helped 100 people with automation, right?
I mean, I think the biggest thing here that you guys have to think over, and there's no right answer. I personally would prefer as a client, and if I was a home inspector, I would offer up 2, 3, 4 pre-inspection emails covering different things and like breaking the information up into small pieces. I've heard a lot of inspectors say that they think that's a spammy approach and they just want 1 or 2 emails, everything in bulk, and do that. So it's up to you. There's no right or wrong answer. It's what works for you. Find what works. Play with it. Try 4, try 2, see what your agent's like.
James, do you have an opinion on that, given the attention span of the modern human?
Yeah, it's a rough one, right? Especially when you're sending emails. We did a webinar on email marketing for inspectors, and you know, there's a thing called the 5-second rule. It's basically people are going to look at your email or your web page for 5 seconds to make a decision if they're actually going to read anything. So they're just going to skim it really quickly. And so I would say, you know, with what Chance is suggesting, understanding that if you send something that's super dense, you got these really long paragraphs, hate to tell you, nobody's ever going to read it. So make sure that you are thinking about how people read. We do have that email marketing webinar that I think can be helpful in kind of understanding some of the fundamentals of this. So something to think through. But yeah, bite-sized chunks. If you're somebody who goes online and just automatically reads every word on a web page, let me know. Let's be friends on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Probably a really interesting person.
Yeah. We appreciate you. We love you. If nothing else, make sure your email that asks them to pay and sign the agreement is clear, concise, bolded text at the top, action item. We want you to get paid. High quality, branded, professional, error free. Another good episode that talks about communication skills, customer service. All right, another summary page there. We'll get into number 4 next time, guys. Guys, thank you. This was awesome. Seriously, this will be a 3-part series now, basically. But hopefully this was helpful to everyone. If you guys have questions, definitely put them in the comments. Let us know. And again, like, we just want to see everyone survive and thrive this winter and kind of come into next year kind of off to the races. And there's enough business still in this industry, I think, for everyone to grow. Wouldn't you guys agree? I mean, 4 million homes are still going to be sold in the next 12 months, at least.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we're seeing people with growing businesses, no matter what the interest rates are doing or anything. People are still growing, and it's people that understand the business side.
Yeah, turn off the news, right? Like, to me, turn off the news. They are selling fear. Like, the data to me is what we need to pay attention to. And hey, 4 million transactions going to happen. Get a piece of it.
Yeah, I always love hearing Kevin and Mike talk about this changing the guard too. There's so many old home inspectors who are on their way out, who are about to vacate space for these new inspectors coming in right now, you coming in right now. So take that market share, take that place for them. Like, you guys are coming into a golden age. So if you can get on the software side of it and have a great product and learn these other skills that we talked about, you guys are poised to take off.
Love it.